Straightforward. But welcome to video number 2, where we're really talking about setting ourselves up for success with the 4 M's, right? So yesterday we talked a lot about mindset, which is always where we want to set intention for anything that we do, and highlighting some of the key points around how that frame that we're creating inside of our mind is dictating an experience of our hormones and vice versa. It's great, actually. We just put that, we did a little funny little post that we sometimes like to do, those that you follow us on Instagram, just regarding some of the weird behaviors that can show up in relationship when maybe one of us is unconscious and we're not paying attention to the other person, or in this particular video I was splashing water carelessly on the mirror, and Sonia in one phase of her cycle was able to come in and sort of clean up and not really think about it, not really feel like she needed to nag. But in the second half of her cycle, things are different. There's less resilience, less patience, maybe more irritability. The hormones are fluctuating, and it's going to show up in how someone maybe reacts or behaves or what have you. And it's a real thing. Like sometimes I splash water and I'm not paying attention to it on the mirror, right? And so to me it's not a big deal, obviously, but to someone else it is, right? And so there's this sort of, is it the chicken and the egg? Are my hormones out of whack and therefore I'm behaving a certain way? Or am I behaving a certain way and, as a result, my hormones are out of whack? And I'd say it's both. And it's cyclical. And definitely, Sonia, chime in on some of those pieces that we're talking about here, because this is really important. It's really easy to get down on ourselves around, things that are going on in life and expectations that we have for ourselves and other people. And if we can also have a way to look through the lens of the hormonal system to appreciate the fact that, I may just be a little bit less resilient this week than maybe I am a week from now. And this is where that OM formula is so important, because we're so quick to make meaning around things. This person is like that. That person is like this. I'm this way. We are constantly making decisions based on a state that we're in, not necessarily a trait about who we are. And I would really like to, all of us, to really investigate and ask those questions, like, who am I really? Who am I in this situation? Who am I in this situation? Can I also be another way in this situation? And how much are my hormones dictating, this default reaction or this default reality for me? And, one experience may be that we feel like we need to apologize for how we're behaving. And can we just observe that we're at a unique stage of life? We're in a unique state of life right now. And what if we just suspend that meaning? So really, you can go back. If you didn't watch the first one, you can kind of tune into some of that. But I think really getting clear on that mindset and understanding that there's this relationship between our hormones and like neurotransmitters, and life is challenging and all these things. But we do show up differently when our hormones are being nurtured and being supported, and when we support them, and there's this dance where the two can really be synergized, and we can also know ourselves at different phases of our life and different states that we find ourselves in. So that's really that first sort of discussion. So moving into the next one, really we wanted to all of us to really start to appreciate just the role of stagnancy, and which is essentially lack of movement, and how that's a metaphor for so many things in our life, and then how to move into this state of flow. So, when you think of this concept of flow, Stephen Kotler has wrote a ton of books on, there's this idea of peak state, peak performance, this flow state that, say, peak athletes would get themselves in, or maybe someone who's an artist gets in the state of flow, or someone who's writing a book, like Sonia's book, and she got into states of flow because things were all the right circumstances were primed to be in this state of flow. And movement is such an important part because it's a physical representation of that energetic or emotional representation of flow within our body, but it's also a representation of flow with the hormonal system. So when we're in stagnation, when we're not moving our bodies, we're not creating a mechanism for things to move. And lots of things move more vigorously when we exercise. Obviously, our temperature increases, our blood flow increases, our lymphatic system increases. We get an increased surge of hormonal activity, the testosterone specifically, when we lift heavy things, or and then cortisol goes up, our stress hormones, our epinephrine, dopamine, norepinephrine. There's a lot of changes in frequency and expression of the hormones when we move our body. And so that's the whole idea behind movement, is that it sets us up for a state of flow. And Sonia and I would say the most important thing that we can do in order to move our bodies, or the most important thing about moving our bodies, is the importance on brain health, or mental or emotional health. And yes, it's about the physical body, it's about toning muscle and all that stuff, but really it's about brain health. And when you think of what does it feel like to be stuck on an emotion, a thought, and whatnot, that stagnancy is really coming from this place of inaction. When we can't make a decision about something, it's because there's stagnancy. When we feel frustrated, we're in our thought process, we're stuck in a state of stagnancy. So let the physical body be a representation or metaphor for helping things move emotionally, helping things move, physically, obviously through the blood and the lymph and whatnot. And if we started to sort of break down more specific what's happening on that musculoskeletal level, every time you move your muscle, you put some sort of load on it. It's like charging a battery. And so many people that are, feeling chronic pain or low energy, all of these things, you're not doing a regular recharge of your battery packs, which is your muscle. Your muscle is literally a source of electrical activity, but it only comes through contraction and relaxation, like this subsequent contract, relax. And that literally puts an electrical load on the body, which stimulates these little energy packets in your muscle cells called mitochondria, but it stimulates the movement of actin and myosin, which allows for contraction and relaxation. So your body literally needs to be recharged every day through movement. And so that's the whole idea of movement as one of these core principles for hormones. Now, how do the two correlate? Like I said, anytime we're moving, we're really supporting brain health, so we're getting the neurons in our brain to start to fire. We're getting an increased release of the hormones from the pituitary gland to the thyroid, to the adrenal glands, to the muscle, to all these different areas of the body, wherever that focused, battery pack is being activated within our muscles. So super important to really pay attention to this role of movement in upgrading the hormonal system. So Sonia and I, and Melissa Alonso, who's our master decorator of ebooks and things like that, and she helps to organize and send out emails to all of you guys. She does a really great job of laying out some of these foundational things. And so when you're looking through the ebook and you're seeing some of the different hormones that are correlated with what we're working on this week, we want to really pay attention to the fact that this movement piece that we're doing is interacting with each of our different hormones in a different, maybe subtle or more obvious kind of way. And so when we're setting ourselves up for the week, really what we're trying to do is instill these behaviors so that we can do them on a more regular basis. This becomes our month, this becomes our year. And really where we center down into this experience is in the experience of a morning practice. Now, not everybody is able to do a morning practice, maybe because kids or life or what have you, it becomes difficult. But there's something really magical about setting yourself up for the day. And really the reason why morning practice, I think hormonally speaking, is so important is because we're getting this surge of cortisol when we wake up. So it's called the cortisol awake response. Too bad Sonia's not here, 'cause she's really good at explaining this. But essentially there's this sort of sweet spot, and we all kind of know this. There's a sweet spot for when we wake up in the morning that, if I sleep in a little bit more, I know I'm going to be more groggy, right? Maybe if you're listening to this as a post recording or you're listening to it live, do you know when you feel like you should wake up because your energy is matching your alertness, right? And that's called the cortisol wake response. So there's this surge of hormonal activity that is there to stimulate that wake-up call. And sometimes we don't listen to it. Sometimes we press the snooze button. Our brain can be awake. We get that little message, I know I should wake up. I know I should move my body, but it feels so good to just be here in this bed. And I wish I could stay here as long as possible. So, that's sort of the discussion that's going on in the morning for all of us. Like, I've experienced that many times over, as has Sonia. Actually, Sonia has a bit of a superpower here. She, for whatever reason, can just get up even when she's fatigued. But these days I do wake up before her. And so I think she just likes the fact that she has a specific time that she gets up after me. But anyways, I'll digress. The point being, though, is that we all have a wake-up call that's waiting for us, that's there, and we need to honor it, because it's part of setting up that whole circadian rhythm. So part of this hormone, this 5 days, like what can happen in 5 days? You can start syncing your circadian clock. And we sync it with light in the morning. So as soon as we wake up, we want to turn the lights on, turn as many lights on as you can. Better yet, this is why we put in there too, try to get outside, get some natural sunlight. Here in the Pacific Northwest, we finally have some sun that's coming out. A great time to get outside, breathe in the fresh air, get some sun on your body. But if obviously you're in an apartment building, you can't do that, or for whatever reason you can't do that, try to get the light on as soon as you can. Try to get some water, hydrate in as soon as you can. And if you can make it work in your schedule, even for 10 minutes, this is where you want to put in that movement, because you want to charge your battery packs for the day. Your ability to have resilience and move through pain and stagnation, and that the whole flow that we just discussed in the brain, and reorganize that mindset, really happens with that movement. So very, very important. And it doesn't have to be complicated, right? It could be a YouTube video that you're watching on movement. It could be, if you've been in some of our programs before, you've got some recorded videos of just some quick little morning routines that you could be doing. Whatever it is, obviously ideal if it's something you enjoy doing, because that can be part of that momentum and actually getting out of bed in the morning. But whatever it is for you, try to implement that in the morning. If it's absolutely not possible, try to get in sometime earlier in the day. According to the research, when we exercise late at night, our sleep quality is affected. And so melatonin goes down. I'll give you a good example. I started playing softball. I'm sore, very sore. I'm not used to quick bursts of speed, although I do love to run. But I played baseball or softball last night, and it was a doubleheader. Apparently, our softball games are doubleheaders every Monday night. But I played the 6:30 game, and that was fine. But then I had to go back for my 9:10 game. And I don't do activity at 9:10 at night. So my sleep last night was terrible, because I was doing way too much activity, running around in a field with the lights on, and at an odd hour of the evening for me. And my sleep was restless, and I'm sore and achy, more so than I would be if I actually had a good night's sleep. And this is that whole circadian clock. So movement should be correlated with that circadian clock, so it's more ideal to get that movement in the earlier part of the day, so the body knows to get up, be ready for the day, charge those battery packs. And then as we move into the evening, in the nighttime practice, the gratitude journal, the things that we discussed, now you're actually set up for proper deep sleep as you sort of make your way into the evening. And so on the next call, we're going to be going into more details on the meal timing, which is also connected to the circadian clock. But know this, this is super important. You can literally change your circadian clock, which is essentially what we're trying to teach you here. This is ultimately the message, is that you can change your circadian rhythm, or coordinate your circadian rhythm in a relatively short period of time. Now, if you've ever gone, traveled, maybe even across North America, or gone to Europe or different parts of the world, there's a calibration that happens to that new time zone. Well, we are recalibrating to a new lifestyle, and that's so important to address. And this is totally connected to everything that we're doing in this week. And so there's a researcher named Dr. Sachin Panda, and he wrote a book called The Circadian Code, which is all about understanding meal timing, movement, all these things. But what his research showed is that even kids, like college kids who are partying on the weekends, I never did that. Just kidding. I think we've all been there. But we partied on the weekends and then tried to recover during the week. And so you stay up late, maybe Thursday, Friday, study for the test on that particular morning. And then you're going out all weekend, and then you're trying to recover. And he says that people doing this kind of strategy, even us, like say, maybe we'll stay up a little bit later on the weekends. We're moving ourselves into a shift worker like reality. And as Sonia will agree, some of the most challenging people to work with hormonally are shift workers. Am I right, Sonia? This is super important, and often the conversation that we're having in our clinic here is like, you got to go to bed on time, right? Or if someone who is a nurse is doing shift work, we try to coordinate, or we get them to actually communicate with their boss about what would it look like to move to a more regular daytime schedule. And I can't tell you, I mean, maybe Sonia, you can agree with this, or speak to this, or type in about this, but often it just requires a conversation. So if you are savvy to this circadian clock, you can actually have conversations to see if you can even be put on a wait list to get into, to sync your schedule into more regular rhythm. And it's literally been every time that someone's really understood this whole circadian clock, and they're willing to try it out. Most of the nurses, and from Sonia mentioned firefighters, not firefighters, there's slightly different case, I think, just depending on which station they're in, because they have to be there, and sometimes it's going to be all hours of the night. But you'd be surprised about how many conversations that we have where the patient or the person is actually successful in making that shift when they talk to their bosses about it. And as Sonia will probably see, the change in the blood work is profound. And this is what I want you guys to appreciate. The things that you're doing this week are really a big deal, because you're actually trying to sync your circadian cycle. This is the whole reason for this 5-day upgrade, is what would it look like if you gave yourself a prescription for going to bed on time, moving your body at the appropriate times of the day, changing the timing of your meals to set you up for digestive fire, like we mentioned last time, the Ayurvedic principle of you want your largest meal in the middle of the day. You ideally want to close the kitchen 2 to 4 hours before bedtime. The earlier you close the kitchen, the better. So the big part of setting yourself up is really honoring the circadian cycle, which is literally this whole hormone upgrade challenge for you guys. So I think that's good. Sonia, is there anything else on movement you think that we need to talk? We talked about it as a battery. We talked about it being a stimulus for your brain to secrete the right hormones to set you up for success for your day. Obviously, emotionally, you can be more resilient when you get some movement in. And we talked about this battery pack. So contraction, relaxation is actually the stimulus for your battery packs to engage, which is helping us move through pain, helping us move through stagnation emotionally, helping us just get stronger, of course. And so Sonia wanted to just emphasize a big part of that is actually going outside, and that's really where that circadian clock starts to get triggered. And our circadian clock can also get triggered by bare feet on the ground, or maybe your feet in the ocean, or whatever your environment looks like outside. But ideally we get bare feet on the ground, reconnect to the earth, program our natural cycle, our natural rhythm, get the sunlight again, if hopefully it's sunny outside, but even just daylight is good as a good start. And so all those things that Sonia mentioned there, decreases cortisol, stabilizes mood, lowers the blood pressure, and helps you feel more connected. And that's the whole idea, right? Because this week is all about self-empowerment, self-connection, recognizing these cycles of life, and what we can do to mitigate some of the stressors that show up. Sonia says she has so much FOMO right now. Sonia, I know there's other questions around, some great questions around postmenopause, and some women who are wanting to know, one of the questions was regarding being on Premarin and hormone, BHRT maybe, and sort of some things to pay attention to in the sort of sage years of life. I think those are important topics which we'll touch on in the next one. And then someone had some questions about supplements, so we're going to get into that as well. And I'm being paged to get to the IV room, so we're gonna cut the video here. And please share any questions you have. Write down your successes, your wins, what you're doing for movement on a daily basis, what your morning practice looks like, what's your relationship to your circadian cycle. If that's a new term for you, let's dive into that a little bit more. But that's really the hidden agenda for us, for you, is to really establish that beautiful rhythm that's going to balance that hormonal system according to your life in the best way possible. So let's get at it again tomorrow. We'll get clear on the time for you guys, and we'll figure out how to get both of us on here if we're in different locations. So much love to you guys. So happy you're here. Keep up the good work and keep sharing. So you may have been following us for a little while, or maybe you're brand new to our channel. Either way, we want you to have the opportunity to really deepen your experience of what you're learning. Either, and again, maybe you've been a patient in our practice, maybe you worked with us virtually, you've done some of our courses, but we want to give you the opportunity to be in the fold of our community, to be with us more regularly, and that's the Health Ignited Club.
Yeah, community is so important to us, and we learn so much from each other. And I think getting together when we do once a month, it just invites us to ask more questions about ourselves, about our journey, about our health. So we would love for all of you to join us there.
Yeah, and so much of our health plans are really dictated around life. Life is crazy, life is challenging. It's easy to fall off the wagon, so to speak. We've got a touch point each month, and we've got resources for you in the membership portal. There's so much to keep you in the momentum and the motivation of really making everything that you're learning into a lifestyle practice.
It's all about accountability and support.
Yeah, so join us there at Health Ignited Club.